Coming up on episode 146 of Creative Writing, I'm talking all about how to keep your audience happy.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hey there, it's Kirsten from Creative Writing, and this is the podcast for you, a writer, blogger, or creative who wants to build an online platform without being smarmy. And if you've been around for a while, you know that when I'm talking about platform, what I'm really talking about is building an authentic connection with your audience. It's just kind of faster to say it as a platform. So that's what we're talking about today, the core of this, and it's super simple. This is not going to be one of those like aha episodes. It's more like a oh duh kind of episodes, but I think it's still really important, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. Maybe because it's very oh duh. Like I think you're going to hear this and like think to yourself, oh yeah, or oh, I'm already doing that. But there'll be some probably oh yeah moments, or hopefully maybe some specific things that you haven't thought about yet. So before I get into the details, just so you can find the show notes, they are at creativewriting.com/146 for episode 146. While you're there, if you want to sign up for my weekly emails, The Quick Fix, it comes out Fridays. I share the podcast links. I also share tips, resources, news, and things that you need to know. And you can go to creativewriting.com/quick fix to get that. So let's dive into how to keep your audience happy. The reality is this. If you want to keep your audience happy, it's pretty simple. You need to set up and then fulfill expectations. That's kind of it. That's breaking it down into like a really, really simple thing. Remember I said this is a no duh episode, but I see people missing opportunities to do this all the time. And I think we overlook it because it's so simple. So I'm going to break down some of the ways that this works, give you some tips and some specific examples. So when we're talking about setting up and fulfilling expectations with our audience, here are some ways that you set up and fulfill those expectations. So the first way, and this is kind of the most obvious because it's obvious, it's what you say. It's what you actually tell people. So when they sign up for your email list, it's when you tell them, like I just did, hey, I send out a once weekly email, here's what's in it. That is setting up an expectation. I know that seems really simple, but these little things matter a lot. Expectations matter a lot. And you'll see through some of the other examples I give, you're going to find this more and more. You've probably already run into this. I'm sure as a user, maybe you've run into this more and maybe you don't see where you might need to set up more clear expectations, but it matters. Book descriptions, what your blog tagline is, the things that you are telling people, here is what to expect from me, and you're telling them explicitly out loud in your words. So I don't know if you guys have seen these before, but you can go Google them when you get done, or maybe I'll link to some in the show notes. But if you go into YouTube, there are some really fun trailers that take a movie, change the music and maybe some of like the voiceovers and make it into something totally different. So example would be The Shining as a comedy, which is an amazing trailer, or Sleepless in Seattle as a horror movie. And if you've ever actually, those are jokes, but if you've ever actually seen a trailer for something and then you go see the movie and it's not the same. And I was trying to think of an example because I know this has happened to me. It can be really disappointing. So often it's like a surprise. Example, Lake Placid, which if you've seen it, you know why I'm laughing. It was billed as like a horror movie about a giant alligator in a lake, in Lake Placid. Of course I saw it because I'm an alligator fan. I also like horror movies. But it's actually like a really campy comedy, sort of making fun of horror a little bit. Way more than it is an actual horror movie. It is not really scary. It has a ton of hilariously cheesy on purpose one-liners. It's not like Sharknado where it was just bad. Lake Placid was actually really smart. Maybe not really. Lake Placid was smart. It was intentional. But the expectations going in were it was a heart. It wasn't so much. The house on, oh man, I'm not going to think. There was the recent show, and I'm not going to look it up right now. The Haunting of Hill House. That's what it was. I watched that with Rob. I made Rob watch it with me. And it looked like a horror series on Netflix. And it was scary at times, but it was much more of a drama. And he actually enjoyed it. I made him watch it because I didn't want to watch horror alone, but he hates scary stuff. So he ended up enjoying it because it was much more of a drama with some scary pieces in there. I wasn't disappointed because it was so good, but I did hear from other people who were disappointed who watched it expecting horror. So again, when you say, this is what to expect, people expect that. And there can be disappointment if they're not getting it. So you need to say what you're going to do and be clear about it and then do it. What you do also sets up expectations. And so if you have set a kind of schedule for how often you post on the blog, your people start to expect that. How often you publish a book, people start to expect that. There's a couple podcasts I listened to that used to be weekly. Then they went to every other week. Now they're like on hiatus, and I don't listen to them anymore. I don't go look for the new episodes because I've been sort of trained to expect they don't come anymore. And that was really disappointing to me. So your actions actually set up expectations. Think about that because you may not be realizing that your actions set the expectation, but they do. And people may not realize your actions are setting the expectation. So then there's almost like more disappointment because they're not really prepared for it. And I'll talk in the tips about what to do if you have to shift something. But what you do sets expectations. What people hear or understand. So this is where you actually are going to need to ask for some outside help. You're going to need to ask if your messages are clear, if your tagline is clear. And I don't mean you have to check every single thing, but you may want to check some of the big things. And I see this a lot in cover design. And I'm going to move into the last one in a second, what people see visually, but I'm going to use the cover design, which is a visual thing, as an example of what people hear. So I'm in a lot of Facebook groups for authors, and a lot of times people get this wrong. So you might think, okay, this is a great cover for this book. And you show it to other people and they're like, oh, I thought that was this kind of book. So one of the groups I'm in, someone posted a cover and it was like a light pastel color. It had a key and a feather. And I looked, caught my eye going through my feed because I'm in that group. And then I read the description and I was thinking like teenage girl book, some kind of YA. No, it's a paranormal romance about a fox shifter, which is a person that turns into a fox. And so I'm not really into that kind of book, but I've read a few and had just read one. So I went over, got a screenshot, and it's a bestseller. It's one that did really well. So I put a screenshot in there like, hey, I think their cover is really pretty, but here is what people expect when they see that. And it was a picture of it had a dark cover. There was a girl on it and you see a fox in the background. Totally different kind of font, totally different kind of feel. And so you might think, okay, I'm expressing one thing, but it's really good sometimes to get feedback because you might not be expressing it very well after all and have some confusion there, and that matters. And so it is good to kind of reach out sometimes and ask your audience or ask other audiences or kind of poll people. You don't have to do that with everything, but it is a good idea sometimes to make sure things are clear. Big things, covers, that matters. If you're changing the tagline to your blog, that matters. If you are doing book descriptions, all those kinds of things are good to get feedback on. Every blog post? No, that would be insane. You don't need to do that. But again, it's a good idea to just kind of every so often test and see if you're where you think you are. And so the cover one brings us into the last one. So we have here are the things that set up expectations as a reminder, what you say, what you do, what people hear or understand, and then what people see. So I already kind of explained how, what people see very much, especially in book covers, that's hugely important. I think nothing is more important for selling your book than the book cover. I said that. Nothing is more important because your book cover is what people see before they read the blurb. They have their eyes stop or they don't stop on your book cover. So you're setting that expectation. But this also goes to things like your Pinterest images or the kinds of things that you post on Instagram. It goes to the color scheme of your blog and the kind of colors that you use, what kind of memes and things you post on Facebook, the ones you create, obviously not ones you share from other people. All those things set a tone. And I think you can incorrectly set your tone. I mean, I've seen people who are writing, I was trying to think recently, I ran across a blog that was like a happy, encouraging faith blog, but it was a black background with white text, which first of all is really hard to read. And most people don't want that. But also it looks very dark because it's dark. It does not make you think of, happy, faithy, joy stuff. It makes you think of like sin and death. So if that's where you're going, hey, good job. But if it's not, then you probably want to reconsider that. So the visuals matter. Your fonts matter. There's some really funny memes out there about fonts mattering. So if I can find one, I'll post one of the show notes. I just saw one recently that somebody shared in our Facebook group. But all those things matter. What you say, what you do, what people hear or understand that you don't realize you're saying, and what people see. And so those are all ways that you set up expectations with your readers. And so now that we kind of talked about some of those things, I want to talk about keeping your readers happy in terms of some specific ways that you can handle and navigate that. Because the reality is you're always going to disappoint people. You might disappoint everybody sometimes, but you're definitely going to disappoint some people, and that's okay. They're probably not your ideal audience. You're not perfect. You're going to mess this up. So here are some tips for making that work, for setting up and keeping those expectations. The first, as much as you can, tell your readers what to expect up front. Surprises are really only good if they're great surprises. Like here, out of nowhere, have a free book. That's a good surprise. Not so good surprise. Hey, I'm launching a product. Guess what? You're getting an email a day for the next 7 days. Lucky you, surprise. Nobody wants that. But your people might be less mad if you say, hey, you know what? I'm about to have a launch. You're going to hear from me every day for 7 days. That changes things. And I know that seems really simple, but it does. Here's an example from Texas driving. This is a weird example, but this is what came to mind for me when thinking about this. So I moved here in 2000. I live in Houston. It's a really big city and people are nice here. There's not a lot of horn honking. It's definitely gotten worse, the driving since I moved here, but it's very aggressive. There's highways, the stretch of highway I use the most, I think, is the widest now in the United States. I think I heard that. It's huge. I mean, it's insanely huge. So anyway, it's crazy to drive, but here's what happens. In, where I grew up, Virginia, and then, I've driven some in DC, there's honking all the time. Somebody, there's a tiny space in front of you on the highway. Somebody pulls in, people honk, people get mad and irate and there's road rage. Here, people pull into that small space and then they wave and there's this weird thing. You wave back and you're not so mad. So I remember once my mom came to visit and we were driving home from the airport and we got on 45, which is a major highway. Usually I'm on 10. We were on 45. And a shout out to all my Houstonians who know what I'm talking about here. So we're on 45 and I was like, Mom, watch this. And I wasn't rude. I still use my blinker because I'm a responsible driver here. But I kind of cut closely in front of somebody else. And then I waved and they waved back. And my mom was like, oh, do it again. And so we drove home. I was not awful and I really wasn't like almost causing wrecks, I promise, but I was kind of being a little bit aggressive and then I would just wave to somebody. And there was traffic. It was like stop and go traffic, where sometimes if you want the space, you have to kind of jerk in there. People might not be happy, but when you wave, it diffuses the anger. And that's kind of like the same thing. If you're going to do some kind of crazy sales thing or send more emails, give them a wave, give them a little heads up to say, hey, I'm doing this. Or, with email, I like to offer them an opt-out, but that's a totally specific thing. I just had to go tangent on that. But if you're telling them what to expect up front, as much as you can, it helps. It's really helpful for establishing that communication, which in turn establishes trust. So as much as you can, keep to your word. This is very much about trust. And people do understand. So this summer, I took basically the whole summer off from the podcast because I just was really struggling to find recording time with all my kids home. At night, I was exhausted. The house was never quiet. And I was trying to really launch this fiction career, which is now working beautifully. So that's, I changed the focus. That's what I did. It was disappointing, but I let people know. You are going to disappoint people. You can't always keep up your pace. You are going to have to disappear. Family happens, life happens, seasons happen. Sometimes you forget. That happens. This podcast got deleted. It's on recording now really late. I came home ready to post it and it was gone. So things happen. I was able to re-record, but for a while I was like, I don't really have the time to do this tonight. But I want to keep my word. So as much as I can, I'm going to keep my word. You're establishing a contract of trust with your audience. And when you keep your word, you're telling them, I am someone you can trust. It's part of building those raging super fans is being trustworthy. If you say you're going to do it, do it. And then that leads us into the last tip. I told you this was pretty simple, y'all. The last tip is, as much as you can, don't set up expectations you can't keep or that you hate. So if you want to email every week, great. If you hate emailing, maybe don't commit to emailing every week. I did launched a membership site. I feel like it was like 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And I disbanded it earlier this year. And I had a couple people say, why are you disbanding it? For me, I felt a personal expectation of keeping up something, and I hated it. It wasn't that I hated the group members, because I actually love them, and we still have our little private Facebook group that's really small and nice, and love you guys. I know you're listening. But for me, it was an expectation that I hated, and they weren't pressing that on me. It was me doing it on myself. But I felt like I had these expectations that I couldn't keep and didn't want to keep. So as much as possible, don't do that. Try to think about something beforehand. Like if you're going to set up a blogging schedule, make sure you can do it. People would much rather you say, I'm going to post once a week or once a month than say, I'm going to post every day, and then you don't. Okay. People would much rather you stick to your word, even if your word is less often than you want. So let me go back over those tips really fast. As much as you can, tell them what to expect up front. As much as you can, keep to your word. And as much as you can, don't set up expectations that you can't keep or that you hate. Okay, duh, right? A pretty duh episode, but are there things hopefully that you are thinking about that you need to set up these expectations better? Are there any things you need to ask somebody else? Hey, take a look at this. Please make sure that I'm actually saying what I want. I hope so. I think that this is such a simple way to create a great relationship with your audience, to build those super fans, to keep people coming back for more because they trust you. And that's really, again, what all of this is about. Keeping your audience happy is about trust. It's about setting up the expectations and then fulfilling them. That's it. That's all I've got for you guys this week. So, action. Head over to the Facebook community if you are not there. It's a lovely group of people. I was going to say it's a lovely group of free people. We're free, but it's a free group full of lovely people. You can go to creativewriting.com/community for that. And again, if you want to get my weekly on Fridays email with tips, resources, links, and more, you can go to creativewriting.com/quick fix. I leave you with this. Go make your audience happy. It's not that hard. Just be trustworthy, keep your word, tell them what to expect. With that in mind, go out and create content that you love and serve your people well.